We're going to start our program today, and our first speaker is Dr. Terry McAllister. She is our keynote speaker, and she's one of the leading figures in the field of disaster resilience. Dr. McAllister is the Community Resilience Group Leader in the Materials and Structural Systems Research Division of the Engineering Laboratory at the National Institute of Standards and Technology. It's called NIST here in the United States. She's also the technical point of contact for the NIST-funded Center of Excellence and the Center for Risk-Based Community Resilience Planning led by Colorado State University. Dr. McAllister is an ASCE. ASCE is the American Society of Civil Engineers, Structural Engineering Institute Fellow, and serves on standards and technical committees for the society. And she also serves on advisory panels for the Department of Homeland Security and Housing and Development Resilience Programs. So it is with great pleasure I introduce Dr. McAllister. So Terry, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Sharif. I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this workshop today, and I hope to provide some context. There's many wonderful presentations that follow by some very accomplished researchers on a range of resilience topics. So I'd like to share some thoughts on how to help communities make risk-informed decisions for improving resilience. So why are we working on community resilience? The figure shows that the number of FEMA disaster declarations by year for 21 hazard types, with natural hazards being the most frequent. And you'll note the high number in 2005 is when we had hurricanes Rita, Katrina, and Wilma across a wide swath of the United States. You also see in the upper right a definition of the resilience that we use at NIST. It's similar to others used for the built environment and social functions and impacts. It addresses performance for 3 resilience phases: pre-event, which is prepare and adapt; the event itself, which is withstand; and post-event, which is recover. So what is the problem? Even though communities adopt and enforce building codes, they develop preparedness plans and mitigate existing infrastructure, they too often experience extensive damage and long recovery periods, and many times for hazard events that are below design criteria. So this suggests that these steps are necessary, but perhaps not sufficient. Explicitly addressing recovery as the next step beyond risk mitigation can help advance resilience. As noted in the box here, resilience planning is being developed by many communities, and many are working to support these efforts, but there's still a huge need for quantitative, validated tools. So you may have noticed that resilience seems to be everywhere today, and I thought I'd list a few examples of resilience concepts. C.S. Halling addressed the resilience and stability of ecological systems in a 1973 paper to characterize how biosystems successfully respond to environmental changes. A simple graphic on the right illustrates the concept that an ecological system may have been stable for some time, but a large disruption can result in a new normal or stability condition. This concept applies to other areas as well. Psychology looks at the individual capacity to face adverse conditions, and organizational resilience is often addressed by continuity of operation plans. Physical and social system resilience has been a more recent focus for engineers and scientists, which many began to address after the National Academy's report in 2012, Disaster Resilience, a National Imperative. NSF also established resilience funding programs around this time as well, which really resulted in a large advance in research in resilience. So resilience incorporates many familiar concepts into an integrative perspective. This functionality versus time graphic illustrates how resilience integrates all aspects of planning and design, especially pre- and post-event activities, which are often addressed independently. However, resilience promotes a proactive stance rather than a reactive stance, encouraging planning and development that minimizes disruption to communities as the next step beyond risk assessment. For example, resilience incorporates recovery of functions into the planning and design process prior to the event. So this proactive stance is leading us to a paradigm shift. How can critical functions and the mainstay of every community, housing, schools, daycare, and businesses, be equitably maintained or recovered? Note that housing comprises 70% of all buildings, most of them single-family homes. If we consider this as a category equally important to critical facilities, how would that change our research and our practice? The NIST research program focuses on 4 measurement challenges which we all face: metrics, data, models, and decision support. While these challenges are interdependent, each area has its own specific issues. Note that quantitative metrics and multidisciplinary data are necessary for resilience models and decision support. Also, there's a lack of data for recovery, which is emphasized in the figure at the bottom of the slide, and an understanding of what needs to be measured to help communities simulate their recovery plans and inform the pre-event activities of planning and design. It is worth paying special attention to the multidisciplinary nature of community resilience planning and analysis. This is where physics-based and data-driven models meet, as Sharif mentioned earlier, to address the performance of the built environment. This is where hard and soft sciences come together to understand the impacts on social functions in the communities. Communities need tools to help with prioritizing the most effective actions for the future. This leads to the idea that social functions should drive performance goals. Stated another way, society's needs for social functions on the left, education, economy, the government, the things that we enjoy, media, community services, these should all inform the functional requirements for our built environment. This includes the desired performance or performance goals for infrastructure recovery following a disruptive event. And that's illustrated here a bit. Recovery can become a metric for communities if they evaluate the time it takes for systems to recover their functionality. And this can be used for either your existing community or else plans for changes to a community. So this schematic shows how functionality varies over time, depending on pre-event conditions and activities, whether there's improvements or aging systems. And at the time of the event, that can also determine the amount of loss of function across the community, as well as the length of time and uncertainty associated with the recovery. From a goal perspective, resilience minimizes hazard impacts with timely recovery, and it helps focus on the prioritizing of events that can best improve resilience for a community. So I'd like to make a brief comment about 3 areas that many communities address: resilience, sustainability, and adaptation. Communities are addressing all 3 many times in parallel, and they may have different time frames and goals. So if we look at it through a time lens, these areas have different focus points that can vary from decades to generations. And from a goal perspective, resilience minimizes hazard impacts with a timely recovery in mind. Sustainability minimizes social, environmental, and economic impacts for future generations, and adaptation minimizes future impacts on current investments. So these things are not always clearly defined as communities address them, and it can muddle the picture when they're doing their resilience planning. I wanted to share a recent survey that NIST conducted of tools that are available to support communities in their resilience planning. We focused on those that helped communities, and approximately 120 tools were identified, and they were assessed as to their type, hazard, provider, and focus. And this slide shows the breakout by category. Note that the most frequent type of tools are data and modeling by federal and private providers for either all hazards or coastal hazards, with what we call the general focus, where they had multiple focus areas, not just primary focus areas, as the others are listed there. I will share that feedback we have heard from many communities is that the number of tools that are available is overwhelming to them, and they need guidance on when and where to use them. So I'd like to share a few slides about the research being conducted at NIST for community resilience. We have 3 thrust areas: developing guidance documents that help communities integrate their efforts for resilience, developing science-based tools for quantitative models and metrics for physical, social, and economic systems, and conducting disaster and failure studies to support improved data collection for resilience. And as Sharif mentioned, NIST funds the Center for Risk-Based Community Resilience Planning, which partners with us in resilience research. The center is intended to help NIST rapidly accelerate its knowledge and expertise in a new area of research. It's been very successful and was renewed in 2020 for 5 more years. The objectives that the center addresses are listed here, showing the focus on multidisciplinary modeling environment, data, and field studies. And the focus in the second 5 years shifted from knowledge creation to knowledge consolidation and dissemination, with the goal of establishing an open source modeling environment called NCORE, or community resilience. You'll be hearing more about the center today by John Vandelant, one of the co-directors. This schematic shows the basis of the NIST guidance for resilience planning and provides a framework for informing our research. We conducted workshops nationally for several years to form this framework and develop our guidance document. And this helps us look at what kind of tools are needed by communities as they try to do their resilience planning. So if you look at this, there are 6 steps here. The first one, form a collaborative planning team, is bringing all the stakeholders together. The second one is what we call understand the situation, knowing the demographics, the built environment, the economy, and how they all interact and affect each other. And with that information, understanding what your goals and objectives for resilience are within the community. And with all this preliminary information, you then go on to conduct your plan development, share it with the community and get approval and all your key stakeholders. And here I'll mention that there's public and private stakeholders. So this can be quite challenging. And then the implementation and maintenance. And what we find is that most communities don't do the first 3 steps. They have a plan and they just iterate on the plan and tend to go between steps 4 to 6. So many planners would look at this and say this isn't new, but what we're finding is that when communities don't address these first three steps, they're really not understanding how resilience can improve their plans, and they're not integrating resilience throughout their plans. So one of our major research areas is community resilience metrics, metrics at the community scale. We have a goal to come up with indicators for physical, social, and economic systems, and one of our products towards getting there is an inventory of all published frameworks and indicators. And there are hundreds of these that have been pulled together into a database, and that will form the foundation for a web-based tool that will help with the development of composite indicators and metrics. And this is an example down here. There's measures which are often used to develop indicators, indirect measures of something that cannot be measured directly. And these are often brought together into what's called a composite indicator because communities can only manage so many indicators in a way that they can communicate with the general public and make decisions for. We also have an EDGES web tool that helps evaluate alternative resilience projects by communities. It looks at direct and indirect benefits over time and helps them make cost-effective solutions to meet their resilience goals. And perhaps a little bit more directly related to the subject today, there is a systems modeling effort. We call it the ARC tool, Alternatives for Resilient Communities. It's being developed to help communities identify alternative sets of actions to improve resilience that meet their goals and their cost constraints. And this is being developed using optimization techniques. It's a decision search capability that employs stochastic optimization. It helps address the large scale and complexity of interrelated systems. And the goal is to help communities identify viable alternatives that they may not normally consider, but will have the most effectiveness. So an alpha version based on the green highlighted text here has just been completed and has entered the testing phase. So I just wanted to close with a discussion about some of the workshops that we've held. The NIST and COE held 2 on systems modeling that are documented in reports. The links are shown here. And more recently, a data and modeling workshop was held in 2018. So the 2018 workshop brought together the variety of stakeholders, researchers, federal agencies, practitioners, and community decision makers. And we had 3 focuses for this workshop. We wanted to seek practical methods and approaches that communities were comfortable with. We wanted to see if we could identify a basis for data standards, thinking about resilience, that would improve the quality of data available for community scale planning. There. I just wanted to show a summary of what was found from the data workshop. And you'll see what's highlighted in the gold font here. We had 7 areas that we focused on: community resilience goals and metrics, data and information, community resilience tools, community resilience planning, funding sources and economic decision support, and last but not least, communication with stakeholders. And the gold font was just trying to help highlight the focus areas, and you'll see the words data, metrics, tools, standard approaches, best practices. These were all highlighted as essential needs for moving forward. And so with that, as closing remarks, just a few thoughts on moving forward. Resilience requires a proactive stance and has identified significant and challenges and needs to help communities with their resilience planning. The integration of soft and hard sciences, physics-based and data-driven models is a significant challenge. Data and models that address multiple scales and timeframes. How to address new and existing infrastructure in our models. Characterizing interdependencies between physical, social, and economic systems, as well as their impact on recovery and how that changes over time with recovery. And outputs and products that end up supporting our end users, the communities, in their decision making. So with that, I thank you for your kind attention. And Sharif, I'll turn it back to you.
All right, thank you very much, Terry. Very interesting talk to know the perspective of a national agency like NIST and your own personal perspectives too. You can, for our participants, you can type in questions in the Q&A and I will moderate the questions and lead them to Dr. McAllister. I do have a question. So from the research that we all see, typically recovery is to pre-disaster levels, but can we have a goal to be better after the disaster than before? And what would that entail?
Yes, that's a great question, and one that many of us have seen being faced after disaster events. Clearly, what was in place prior to the event did not work well. So this is where the ability to look at alternatives, if we want to do new construction or mitigation prior to an event, to look at how it will improve community performance, we need models that help us understand that. Some communities recognize that they're going to have problems and they make plans to build better after an event, but they have everything in place. They're not waiting until after the event to start doing that type of planning. As we all know, very poor planning occurs right after an event. These are very thought-provoking questions that need to be addressed ahead of time.
Thank you, Terry. I have a question here from Richard Krupar III. Where do you see insurance playing a role in this framework?
Yes, insurance. Insurance, we have seen in some of the work with communities, actually helps the recovery. Those that have access to money immediately after the event are able to start recovering right away. Those that have delayed access to resources, it really slows down the recovery, and this can often happen with homes or businesses, and you'll find that it has a widespread effect on the community. So even though the federal support that's available, I think, is important to communities, striving to have stronger insurance coverage wherever they can really help after an event. It can also perhaps guide some of the decisions made for building and construction if insurance starts to look at the quality of construction and think about how they insure different types of construction.
Thank you, Terry. There's another question by Li Liu, which says, how would you consider sea level rise in coastal city resilience?
Yes, many communities are looking at it right now. It's a fact of life for many coastal communities. So this is where if you have a model that looks at flooding or coastal hazards, you need some estimate, and where you obtain that from depends on the data that's locally available and the tools that have looked at sea level rise. I would incorporate it for a future prediction. One of your models that you look at, if you have your current community, what does it look like 50 years from now or even 100 years from now, to help inform building code adoption, new construction, and mitigation activities. So a very important part of resilience modeling.
There's a question from Ahmed Abdel Hadi, which says, thank you for your presentation. One of the challenges you mentioned was the limited data related to the recovery process. Can you comment on how to approach and hopefully tackle this challenge?
Yes. So one of the activities that NIST and the center are conducting is collecting what we call data during a longitudinal recovery study. So you go back over time and say for 3, 5 years, however long it takes as a community's recovering, to collect data on the restoration of the physical infrastructure, how well businesses are doing, how many people are in their homes, going back to school. This is the type of data that communities need to understand the impacts. Part of the science, what we're trying to determine is what data needs to be collected, and hopefully, as others start to look at this issue, we can come to some sort of agreement on a minimum set of standard data so that all communities can start collecting this kind of data to inform this recovery modeling.
Yeah, I would think that's really challenging as well, and primarily even from the point of view of the population itself, because they are recovering from devastation. They may have lost their jobs, family members, and we're trying to collect data from a situation like this. So I see that it's very difficult to do. Very difficult.
It is, and you have to be very sensitive to collecting data while they're in the midst of such devastation and challenges. So there's a number of additional challenges as well, Sharif, you're right.
Okay, thank you, Terry, very much. I think we are out of time for questions. You have set the stage for the rest of the day in terms of how it is that we would use computation to try and address some of the challenges that you mentioned. So thank you again.
Thank you, Sharif.